Sand and spice. Nothing better. Dune Part 2 is the long-awaited follow-up to Dune Part 1, both directed by Denis Villeneuve and starring Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson, and a stacked cast of regular actors. And I finally saw Part 2 today. Now keep in mind, before I saw Part 2, I actually did watch Part 1. Yes, it took me until the point where the new one released to actually see the first one. My opinion on it was fine. I gave it like a 60. It was not my favorite thing in the world. I had some issues with pacing, characterization. I didn't really think Timothée Chalamet grew into the character of Paul at all, and I had some really big holdups on where the scope of the story was and the direction it was going. Walking into Part 2, my main takeaway was that, okay, what I want from this film is that I want it to actually expand upon the first part in a giant way. I want it to feel like its own movie, but also advance the plot forward, and I want it to prove to me that Dune 3 will be amazing and that I should love this series. And I walked out pleasantly surprised because this thing is solid. This thing is a genuine work of cinematic art that needs to be appreciated on the biggest screen you can possibly find. Get on it. Timothée Chalamet has finally grown into the character of Paul as mentioned. He really feels natural and realistic in this role. He really comes across as sympathetic and charismatic. You really care about the stakes that him and his friends and family go throughout the course of the runtime. And I really liked the relationship between Paul and Chani. I thought that was really well explored, and I thought that they both conveyed it in such an excellent and realistic way. It really felt grounded without seeming too outlandish. It really felt natural and realistic to how most relationships are. And it was also really complex to see how it evolved throughout the runtime of the film. Rebecca Ferguson is a standout in every single scene she's in this film. She commands every single second with ease, captivating the audience, never letting them go, and bringing an intensity to this that you really wouldn't expect from a role like that. The scope of this film is epic in nature. It really is one of those cinematic experiences that if you watch it on streaming, you're doing yourself a disservice because this deserves to be seen in theaters. If you at all care about the art form of cinema or just film in general, this is one of those films that you definitely have to go see in theaters. IMAX, Dolby, whatever format you choose, you have to go see it because films like this only come along once in a while, right? We're probably not going to get another film of this scope this year. There might be a few down the line, who knows at this point, but genuinely, this is artistry of the highest cinematic form, and you definitely need to go see it in theaters if it interests you. The effects are seamless, the cinematography is beautiful and breathtaking, and the direction is just simply incredible. Denis Villeneuve is firing at the top of his game here. He always fires at the top of his game. I don't think there's a single film of his that I haven't enjoyed, and I really, really love what he did here. It really feels so outlandish and grand, and it really is just such a cinematic spectacle of a movie. The score by Hans Zimmer is definitely a high point in this film, really drives home the emotional complexity of this. Every single scene where it's playing in the background, you feel it. Like, not only just the bass rumble, because IMAX bass rumble is serious, but you also feel the emotions, the scope, the grandeur of it. It really comes together to create such an intense experience. This film overall is very good. However, I don't think it's as good as some reviews are painting it out to be. I've seen a little bit of comparisons to like films like Lawrence of Arabia, and I think it's kind of funny because I don't think this film is anywhere near that level. Recency bias is a really big thing nowadays, and it's a topic I struggle to address myself because sometimes I'll be watching a movie and I'll be like, oh, that was awesome, that's a masterpiece. And then later on down the line, I'm like looking back on it and I'm just like, yeah, it was fine. It's happened to me a few times in the past, doesn't really happen regularly to me, and I can confidently say that this is one of those films that I think the positive reviews are warranted. It's a phenomenal film. However, I think that the people comparing it to Lawrence of Arabia and saying it's one of the greatest sci-fi films ever made really need to temper their expectations. And also, I think in the future, they're going to look back at those opinions and say, that was good. I don't know if it was that good. Austin Butler's villain in this is like really interesting because people are comparing him to Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. Absolutely not. His performance here is so subdued and he's barely in the film. Like literally maybe 4 or 5 scenes in total. He's not in this like at all. And it's really fun to me that people are putting such emphasis behind his performance when the fact is that the character isn't really developed. In fact, his villain is very weak in this. The characterization of his villain is a really weak point. I never really got to feel his motive behind it other than he was just this weird like kind of psychopathic guy. I don't know if there was much more to his character than that, but the way they built him up, it seemed like he was going to do something more epic. And aside from an epic conclusion where his character really did get a few moments to shine, I really didn't feel like his character really added anything special to this film, to be honest with you. And I also felt like Zendaya's acting overall, I'm not here to knock on her performance or her character at all. I'm just saying her performance was probably one of the weakest parts of the film for me. Again, I have no hate on Zendaya. I really love her work and I'm a really big fan of hers. But here, I think that she struggles to keep up with some of the more veteran-like actors here. Even Timothee Chalamet, opposite her, acts her in circles. I get that's because Paul's the focus of the film, but also I really like Chani, and I really think that she was a strong character and deserved more characterization, and I really think she deserved to play a bigger role in this film than she actually did. It also does feel somewhat constrained in the middle act. It's a slower middle act, to be sure, and it definitely feels like the scope narrows down from what it was in the opening and ending acts. But again, once you get to that third act conclusion, it all clicks together. Everything is just bonkers. And it was one of those moments where I wasn't feeling the film in the middle of it. And I'm like, oh, I'm probably going to give this like a 60 or 70 again, like the first part. But that ending, man, really, really improved this film. And I really was a big fan of it. So I think that it really helps this film in a lot of ways. Overall, it's really solid, and I highly recommend you see this at some point in theaters because it's one of those movies that really reminds you how key and important the theatrical experience is. It's really just one of those films that you really need to go see in theaters. I know I've said it like thousands of times in this review, but I really do believe it because it's such an important film to cinema in general, and I really think you guys are going to enjoy it when you see it in a large format. So with that being said, I would give Dune Part 2 an 87 out of 100. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new to my channel, please do not forget to click that subscribe button, like the video, and comment down below. And also turn on those push notifications to be notified whenever a new video drops. With that being said, this is Mitchell signing off. Peace out.